Hello guys, welcome to Jap, a new playlist where I basically yap. Today, we're talking about stocks. You ever realize investing is basically Pokemon? Stay with me. So, when you're a kid, you pick a starter Pokemon, let's say Charmander, and you pick him because he looks cool, you know? He's a little orange lizard, and he's pretty cool. And one day, you think this guy is going to become a Charizard, you know? That's basically investing, guys, except instead of training Pokemon, you're training your money. And the sad thing is, nobody teaches us this properly. You know, in school, they'll teach you about how to find an area of a triangle. They'll teach you about, like, I don't know, the mitochondria. But they never really teach you about, like, the world, the real world, money, finance, stocks. And it's really not that complicated as people think it is. Now, I'm not saying school is useless. Obviously, education matters. But bro, how do I leave school knowing how to analyze a poem about a depressed tree but not knowing what an index fund is? That should be illegal. Because, investing sounds scary at first, and if you don't know what you're doing, you'll probably get lost. It'll sound like something only rich guys do. Guys in suits. Guys who drink sparkling water and wear Patagonia vests. Now, I'm not a financial advisor or anything, but I'm here to just explain what stocks are and like how to, I guess, the beginner lesson about stocks. And I'll probably just make one video about this, just because there's a lot of people out there that want to get into this thing, but they end up falling into like some scammer traps or just like some people on social media telling them to invest in a certain stock and promise them that it'll go crazy, or maybe just people that don't know how to start and they're wondering what stocks are. And I'll make a quick brief intro to this while comparing them to Pokemon. So I'm gonna start off by explaining what is a stock. A stock is a tiny piece of ownership in a company. So if you buy a stock in Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, whatever, you don't just own a random number, you own a small fraction of that business. You own a share. If the company does good, you make money. If the company does bad, you lose money. If the company goes crazy good, you make a lot of money. If the company, I don't know, stops for some reason, crashes, you can lose all your money. Now you can keep your money in your bank account, right? I used to do that, but here's the thing, guys. The value goes down due to inflation, and I'm not saying go invest your money. No, I have nothing to do with your money, okay? I'm just here to teach you about stocks, and I do want to teach you about a certain type of stock called index funds. And an index fund is basically a group of stocks, and I'll tell you about this one specific one, and you've probably heard about this before. So for most beginners, the best starter Pokemon is the S&P 500 index fund. That's it. That's the starter. The S&P 500 basically is a collection of 500 of the biggest companies in America. So instead of trying to pick one company and praying it becomes a Charizard, you're buying a little piece of the whole team. You're not betting everything on one Magikarp. You're saying, hey, give me all the Magikarps. One of these guys is going to turn into Gyarados. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Meta, Google, and a bunch of hundreds of other companies, right? And you're not trying to be a genius. You're not trying to predict the future with a third eye. You're just saying, I believe that over the long term, the biggest companies will probably keep building, selling, growing, and making money. An example is VOO. It's an ETF that tracks the S&P 500. There are others too, but VOO is one of the famous ones people talk about, and it's one that I personally use. Okay, what exactly is a VOO? A VOO lets you buy a tiny piece of the 500 biggest US companies in one go. It's basically a tracker for the S&P 500. And it's not just the VOO. There's many ETFs out there that track the S&P 500. And you can also look them up, And there's other ETFs that track other things, not just the S&P 500. There's some that track, top countries worldwide, or some that just focus on a specific section, like tech or stuff like that, Now, if you want to invest, you're gonna need a brokerage account. basically a company that lets you buy and sell investments, you know? And basically, you can't just usually go directly to Apple and say, hey, give me one Apple stock, please. No, you need a middleman. You know, the middleman is a brokerage. There's many examples out there. Personally, I'm in the EU. I use Revolut, but there's many out there. You know, look it up, guys. Back to the S&P 500. So the S&P 500 is like picking a reliable starter Pokemon and actually training it. You know, instead of chasing some legendary. It's not flashy. It's not gonna make you rich tomorrow. You're not gonna put $100 in and wake up in a mansion. But that's not the point. The point is time. The earlier you start, the better, and that's the part that hurts, you know, because once you understand it, you immediately wish someone taught you earlier. Because investing is not just about how much money you put in, you know, it's about how long that money has to grow. You know, time is like candy for XP, you know. Now, if you start at 18, 20, 22, 25, even with small amounts, you give your money decades to compound. And compounding is basically evolution. At first, it looks pathetic. You invest 50, nothing happens. 100, the market starts dropping. You invest 200, and suddenly your portfolio is red. You know, you're staring at your phone like, whoa, my starter Pokemon just got, like, damaged. One-shotted. Woo! But that's just early game. You know, nobody becomes champion in the first down. You keep going. Month after month, year after year, your money starts small as a tiny Pokemon, like a tiny Magikarp, and after a few years, it's going to become a Gyarados eventually. Uh, but yeah, every month is another battle. Every year, another level. And slowly, quietly, you know, your money starts evolving in the background. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need to watch charts all day. You don't need to understand every economic report. You don't need to know what Jerome Powell had for breakfast. You just need to start. You know, that's why investing matters. Not because you're trying to flex or you want to become finance bro, whatever, or you want to sell a course from a rented Lamborghini and scam people. It's just because you want to protect future you. You know, future you might want a house, freedom. You know, you maybe just not being able to panic as rank goes up in the future. You just want to have options. And you know, people treat their portfolio like the Pokemon squad. You know, everyone has their favorites. You'll hear a guy talk about his portfolio like he's showing you his team. You know, he'll be like, oh yeah bro, I got Apple, Nvidia, a bit of Tesla, and this random small penny stock nobody knows. But trust me, this one's different. And that random stock could be his favorite Pokemon. You know, it might be useless, it might be down 90%. I don't know, it might have done absolutely nothing for 3 years, but he loves it. Just everyone has that one stock they defend with their life, and it's just like how someone will pick a weird Pokemon that isn't even that strong, but because they like it, they keep it in their squad, they keep leveling it up. That's how investors are, you know? There's nothing wrong with that, but hey, that's something. Anyways, your portfolio basically becomes your Pokemon squad. You want good Pokemon, you know? Not not some weak ones. And honestly, I'm a lazy guy. I go for Snorlax. You know, I just go for the S&P 500. You can look it up, guys. Do your research. Look into this. It's just the safer option, and it's like a balanced squad from the beginning. And once you actually understand the game, maybe then you can add individual stocks later. But I think a lot of investors say that it's best to have at least most of the money in the S&P, so like a 80%, 90%, and then 10% you can play around with. But obviously not all your money. Like have a emergency fund or like a savings or something, and just use the money that you can afford to lose when it comes to this. Yeah, that's the whole point. You're not just investing, you're building your team. You're giving your future self a fighting chance. And hopefully when life sends out its strongest Pokemon, you won't be standing there with an empty bank account and a fainted Magikarp. You'll have something built, something trained, something evolved. Goodbye, guys.